All right, welcome back. In the last few chapters of Maniac Magee, um, Maniac and Grayson, well, Grayson was teaching Maniac how to play baseball or how to pitch some of his famous pitches and some tricks of the things that he picked up and strategies, etc., that he learned while in the minor leagues for many years, baseball. And while they're doing that, we find out that Grayson never learned how to read. And so they go to the library, and Grayson decides he wants to learn how to read, and Maniac's going to teach him. So he stops working in the morning so he can practice and work with Maniac on reading and learning how to read. And they go to the library and they pick up a whole bunch of picture books and easy reader kind of books and chalkboard, small chalkboard and some chalk so he can practice his letters and writing things. And at the end of chapter 28, he finally reads his first book, which is The Little Engine That Could. And at the end of it, Maniac yells or says amen and gives him a big hug, and that makes him very happy, makes Grayson very happy. So they are becoming closer and closer friends. Chapter 29. For most of November, Winter toyed with Two Mills, whispering in its ear, tickled it under the chin. On Thanksgiving Thursday, Winter kicked it in the stomach. But that didn't stop the old man and the boy from joining the 10,000 who thronged to the stadium on the boulevard to see the traditional high school football game. The Arctic air laid panes of ice over the crayfish-edged pools of Stony Creek. The effect was the opposite on human noses. Maniacs and Graysons ran like faucets, and not a handkerchief in sight. They deputized their sleeves and grabbed handfuls of napkins from the refreshment stand. Two Mills won the game, thanks to the last-minute 73-yard TD, touchdown, pass from quarterback Dennehy to James, hands down. From the instant his old trash-talking Sandlot pal cradled the ball in his long brown fingers, Maniac was jumping on his seat, screaming trash at Hand's pursuers every step to the goal line and glancing about to make sure Mrs. Beale wasn't hearing. By the time they got back to the baseball room, they were nearly frozen. But the freeze was good, for it made the warmth of the little apartment all the more welcome. Within 15 minutes, the space heater had the place positively tropical, while in the toaster oven, their 5-pound Thanksgiving chicken was already beginning to brown. A pair of hot plates and a squad of pots were pressed into action, and by mid-afternoon, the two were sitting down to a feast of roast chicken, gravy, cranberry sauce, applesauce, SpaghettiOs, raisins, pumpkin pie, and butterscotch crimpets. Maniac thought of Thanksgiving's past, of sitting around a joyless table, his aunt and uncle as silent and lifeless as the mammoth bird they gnawed on. He said this grace: Dear God, we want to take this opportunity to thank you for the best Thanksgiving dinner we ever had. Well, I ever had. I guess I shouldn't speak for my friend Grayson. He peeked across the table. Grayson, he whispered, is this your best one too? The old man opened one eye. He shrugged. I don't know. I ain't tasted it yet. Maniac glared, rolled his eyes upward, and hissed, Grayson. The old man flinched. Yeah. He squinted one eye at the chicken. Yeah, I guess it is. The best, Maniac prompted. The best. Maniac went on. And we want to thank you for this warm house and for our own little family here and for Grayson learning to read. He's already read 13 books, as I'm sure you already know. And one more thing. If you could find some way to let the Beale family know I'm wishing them a happy Thanksgiving, I'd really appreciate it. They're the ones on 728 Sycamore Street in case there are any other Beals around. Amen. Amen, said Grayson. They stuffed themselves silly, then collapsed and listened to polka music. Grayson had brought over a record player a week before, along with his entire music collection, 31 polka records. Grayson loved polkas. Of course, one cannot listen to polka music for long before getting up and dancing. which is what the two Thanksgivingers did as soon as their bloated stomachs allowed. They danced and they laughed, record after record. Whether it was the polka that they danced is another question. It was nearly dark, both of them having recollapsed when Maniac said, "Is there any paint around?" "Guess so," said Grayson. "What for?" "You'll see. Can you get some and a brush?" The old man dragged himself up. "What color?" "How about black?" 5 minutes later, the old man was back. "Got brown, that do?" "Fine," said Maniac. He opened the can, stirred the paint, put a jacket on, grabbed the brush, and went outside. Grayson followed. He watched the kid paint on the outside of the door in careful strokes. 101. Maniac stepped back, admiring his work. 101, he proclaimed. 101, Band Shell Boulevard. Chapter 30. If Thanksgiving was wonderful, Christmas was paradise. By now, Grayson had officially moved out of the Y and into 101 Band Shell Boulevard. Thanks to his long acquaintanceship with the locker room attendant, he and Maniac were privileged to continue using the Y shower facilities at their pleasure. For decoration outside, they nailed a wreath to the door. There was only one small window, but it had no sill to hold a candle, so some spray snow had to do. Inside was another story. Santa's elves themselves would have felt at home. Strings of popcorn swooped across the ceiling. Evergreen branches flared at random, dispersed their piney aroma. Wherever there was a few vacant square inches, something Christmassy appeared. A matchbox creche, a porcelain Santa, a partridge in a pear tree. One day, Grayson dragged a pair of tree limbs in and started sawing away. When he was finished, a wooden reindeer stood in the room, big enough for Maniac to ride. Of course, the tree got the most attention of all. By the time the two of them finished trimming it, their tree trimming instincts having languished for so many Christmases, hardly a pine needle could be seen under the tinsel and balls and whatnot. In fact, though they were delighted with their effort, the urge to trim was still full upon them. One room was simply too small to hold the spirit bursting, so they went outside and crossed the creek and tramped the woods until they came to a fine and proper evergreen, and there, their footsteps muffled by the carpet of pine needles, their every breath and whispered word arrayed in frosty white, they trimmed their second tree. This time, the ornaments were nature's brilliant red and yellow necklaces of bittersweet, pungent pine cones, wine-red clusters of sumac berries, abandoned bird-bodied boats of milkweed, delicate thumb-sized goblets of Queen Anne's lace. Chapter 31. It was still dark when Maniac woke on Christmas morning. Within an hour or two, the holidays would come bounding down the stairs and squealing round the tinseled trees of Two Mills. But for the moment, Christmas bided its time outside, a purer presence. Maniac shook Grayson awake, but stayed the old man's hand when he reached to turn on the light. They bundled themselves and ventured into the silent night. Maniac carried a paper bag. Snow had fallen several days before. In much of the town it had been plowed, shoveled, and slushed away, but in the park, along the creek, the woods, the playing fields, the playground, it still lay undisturbed. Save for the tracks of rabbits and squirrels, beyond the tall pines, stars glittered like snowflakes, reluctant to fall. They visited their tree. They stood silently, just to be near it, letting the magic of it drift over them. In the pine-patched moonlight, the Queen Anne's goblets looked for all the world like filigreed silver. They walked the creek woods all the way to the zoo, meandering wordlessly throughout the snowy enchantment. As if by design, they both stopped at the same spot, above the half-submerged, rooty clump of a fallen tree. Somewhere under there, they knew, was the den of a family of muskrats. The old man laid a pine branch at the doorway, and Maniac whispered, "Merry Christmas." They visited the animals at the zoo, at least the outdoor ones, wishing them a happy holiday. The ducks seemed particularly pleased to see them. By the time they came to the buffalo pen, dawn was showing through the trees, and before the old man finished saying, "Want a boost?" Maniac was up and over the fence. If Mother Buffalo was glad to see the fence hopping human again, she didn't show it, but Baby came trotting on over, and the two of them had a warm reunion. Before leaving, Maniac reached into the paper bag and brought out a present. "For you," he said. It was a scarf, or rather 3 scarves tied together. He wrapped them around Baby's neck. "Next year, you'll get stockings for your horns," he grinned, "if you have them by then." A final nuzzle, and he was back over the fence. They headed back home as the town awoke. Breakfast was eggnog and hot tea and cookies and carols and colored lights and love. As in all happy Christmas homes, the gifts were under the tree. Maniac gave Grayson a pair of gloves and a woolen cap and a book. The book did not appear to be as sturdy as the others lying around. The cover was blue construction paper, and the spine, instead of being bound, was stapled. The text was hand-lettered, and the pictures were stick figures. The title was "The Man Who Struck Out Willie Mays." The author's name, which Grayson read aloud with some difficulty, was Jeffrey L. Magee. Maniac, in his turn, opened packages to find a pair of gloves, a box of butterscotch crimpets, and a spanking Snow White never-used baseball. He was overjoyed. He rushed to the old man and hugged him. The old man put up with that for a second and then pulled away. "Hold on," he said. He went to one of the baseball equipment bags and reached in, tunneled down to the bottom, and came up with another package, this one wrapped crudely in the newspaper. "Hiding this," he said. "Didn't know if you're the kind of kid sneaks looks." Maniac tore it open and gaped helplessly when he saw what it was. To anyone else, it was a ratty old scrap of leather, barely recognizable as a baseball glove, fit for a garbage can. But Maniac knew at once that this was Grayson's, the one he had played with all those years in the minors. It was limp, flat, the pocket long since gone. Slowly, timidly, as though entering a shrine, the boy's fingers crept into it, flexed, curled the cracked leather, brought it back to shape, to life. He laid the new ball in the palm, pressed glove and ball together, and the glove remembered and gave way and made a pocket for the ball. The boy could not take his eyes off the glove. The old man could not take his eyes off the boy. The record player finished the Christmas polka, then clicked off, and for a long time there was silence. 5 days later, the old man was dead. Okay, I can't talk right now, so I'm sorry to leave you on that note, but we will read some more next week. I hope you enjoyed your trip to the zoo.